The final garden is designed by Barry Chambers, and it's based on his own lifelong love of the sea, as well as the poem by John Keats called On the Sea. Now, Keats wrote his poem in 1817 whilst he was on the Isle of Wight, and that's where Barry went last month, following in the footsteps of the poet to seek inspiration.
It keeps eternal whisperings around desolate shores, and with its mighty swell gluts twice 10,000 caverns, till the spell of Hecate leaves them their old shadowy sound.
I'm doing one of the English poets' gardens based on a sonnet by John Keats called On the Sea, because I wanted to do a garden that was about the sea, not presented as a coastal garden, but presented as a garden which evokes images of the sea and of a summer storm. For me, the sea, in much the same way as Keats writes about in his sonnet, is about washing away the mundane stresses and strains of everyday life and just sort of clearing your head completely.
O ye who have your eyeballs vexed and tired, feast them upon the wideness of the sea.
I really get that sense of coming down to the sea, of everything just being alleviated, and you're just left with this sort of hypnotic sense of just watching the waves. As a child, we used to spend a lot of time down at the beach during the summer holidays. We often had a beach hut, and I remember playing with my brother. We would run along and see, you know, how close we could get to the waves splashing up and falling down as they were coming down onto the promenade. Come to have a look at how the wildflowers are actually growing here in amongst all of the grass. Obviously they're really low down and they're hugging the ground to keep out of the wind. We've got lots of Daucus carota growing up here right on the edge of this cliff, all spread around, and they're lovely little plants, quite pinky when they're in bud like that, but in fact when they actually come out into flower, what you've got is this nice white umbel which looks quite frothy, and it would be nice to include some of these on the top of the cliff area, and then that ties up beautifully with all these white frothy flowers that we've got in the sea of plants at the back of the garden. Lots of this bird's foot trefoil also growing all around here, but in fact it's on the much more grazed down area. It takes a bit of time to recreate a really wild looking area of planting, but actually I find it really quite fun to put the plants in such a way that they look like they've been sowed by nature. And in fact that relates really to the rest of the garden, because the rest of the garden is about plants that would self-seed, and a garden that in fact would be, at least in part, redesigned by nature each year.
Now, last saw you by the seaside, planning out your planting for the cliff top. Did that work out okay? Have you got the plants you needed?
Well, as you can see, I've gone for a chalk cliff, because I think when people think of the Isle of Wight, they will think naturally straight away of chalk. So what I've got on the top is all chalkland planting. We've got scabious and harebells, just high enough so that you've got this very dramatic profile.
And to what extent did the poem limit you and direct you, or did it just provide inspiration?
It's evolved a little bit in that I've injected a bit more of my personality. For me, it's a summer storm. This is one of the storms where myself and my brother would run along the promenade, and these great big waves would be crashing against the front, and they'd shoot up in the air, and we'd run underneath and see how close we could get, daring each other to get closer and closer to all of this water coming straight down above our heads.
It's very carefully planted, but you were saying how that you like things to set seed. You like things to go off on their own.
Yeah, I really enjoy when a plant just turns up somewhere and you think, well, let's give that a go, and maybe another one comes up somewhere near, and suddenly you end up with a plant association that you hadn't even thought of trying. And I think that's the real joy of gardening.
Now, why did you decide to use mirrors along the edge on either side?
Well, the mirrors are to try and create the wideness of the sea that Keats talks about. So they've got a little bit of distortion in them as well, which I think just adds to the kind of watery storm effect that I was looking for.
I love the way, particularly the grasses and the white, this idea of you and your brother running along the seafront as little children. That will stay with me.
Thanks very much.